Today, I'll talk about IOC injury prevention program cassette, Train Smarter, and Go Archery. The main point of my lecture is IOC made injury prevention app cassette Train Smarter that covers all Olympic sports. I'm going to tell you the background of cassette, how to apply for archers, and my experience of using this app. This presentation was produced with the support of IOC Solidarity Fund project, Korean Sports and Olympic Community KSOC organization chat, the Medical Science Department's Medical Center, and the Korean IOC Research Center collaborate. The cassette special care team was formed. The cassette special care team consisted of the head of physical therapy at the KSOC Medical Center, the Medical Sports Science Committee member of the Korean Archery Association, and me. My name is JinTaek KIM. I'm Medical Director for Korean National Archery Team. I got IOC diploma in sports physical therapist. I'm working with the Kano Youth team, and I have been working with Archery national team last 10 years. I participated in 3 World Championships, 2 Asian Games, and Olympics. Besides, I'm also a researcher. In 2019, I have published an article about exercise program for archers. Firstly, I want to explain what cassette is. Secondly, I'll explain how to apply the cassette program in archery. In 2019, IOC recognized 11 research centers worldwide for prevention of injury and protection of athlete health. Injury prevention research was started at the 4 centers from 2009. One of the IOC research centers, Oslo Sports Trauma Research Center, focused their research about football, handball, and alpine skiing. Their major injuries were ankle, hamstring, and ACL. Numerous scientific studies have proven that the structural warm-up exercises can reduce the risk of injury by over 50%. Therefore, IOC collaborates with the Oslo Sports Trauma Research Center and several international federations. They made a new mobile app for 2014 for the Youth Olympic Games in Nanjing, China. You can easily download the cassette from Google Play and Apple Store for free. You will find specific exercises fitted to your sports. All your exercises are presented through the video with easy-to-follow instructions on how to perform the exercise correctly and with varying levels to make them more difficult and challenging. You can also select by body part, check by dividing by difficulty, and find the exercise you want to apply. You can go to the web page. It provides exercise videos and PDF files. Then, let's look at the IOC chosen strategy for injury prevention. The first step is to know what the extent of the injury problem is. That's the prevalence of injury. Second is to know the risk factors and mechanisms that cause injury. Third is to introduce preventive strategy to reduce future risk factors and mechanisms in the previous step. And the last step, the effect of the measures must be evaluated by repeating the first step. In this review, some aspects of the first and the second step of the sequence of prevention will be discussed. Let's start with the first step. The prevalence of archery. This is an injury survey at the 2002 Antalya Grand Prix tournament in Turkey. A total of 202 recurve and compound archers past to present injury were investigated, and 120 archers, 59%, said they had a history of injury. The injury occurred in the order of shoulder, finger, elbow, and low back. and the main diagnosis is tendinosis and rupture. The onset of injury occurs chronically with 79%. At the Olympic Games, the total injury rate was 9.6% in 2008, 12.9% in 2012, and 9.8% in 2016. In 2008, the archery injury rate was 7%, which was the highest among non-contact sports. At the London Olympics, the total injury rate was the highest during the recent Olympics, while the archery injury rate was the lowest. At the Rio Olympic, archery injury was low, but not the lowest, so it needs to require further research. This is the injury rate for the Korean national archery team last season. Injury occurs more during training than competition. Site of injury occurred in order of the shoulder, neck, thoracic, and low back. Injury occurs more gradually onset due to overuse than sudden onset. The main diagnosis was the muscle, including muscle stiffness and muscle rupture, then tendon, bursitis, low back pain, and joint sprain. Next, we need to find out what kind of risk factor and mechanism exist in archery. There are a few studies of risk factors. According to Dennis J. et al. 2010, a case study from 1989 to 2003, risk factors are the older, the more women, the experience, and technique. According to the cross-sectional study of 156 Indian archery university students by J.K. Gruber and A.G.K. Sina, 2017, resulted was as follows. As the intrinsic risk factors, only past shoulder pain and age was factors, but previous treatment and gender were not the factors. As extrinsic risk factors, all were not risk factors. Shoulder pain can interfere with exclusion of shooting over 20% of archers. Among the archers who currently have shoulder pain, physical examination revealed a problem with impingement, supraspinatus, long head of biceps, and subscapularis due to overuse. My opinion on the injury mechanism of the most injured shoulder is the loading that is gradually applied in the action of the drawing and anchoring the bow. If you look at the more specifically at the back of the right shoulder, you can see the anatomy as shown on the right. This video is the movement of the scapula from setup and drawing. In the loading direction of the force drawing the string, the force makes the shoulder internal rotation like the direction the red arrow rotates. In particular, when the archer's muscle strength is weak in the internal rotation loading of the bow, injury comes to structure marked with red boxes. This is the most injury area for archer. To prevent such injury, the muscle strength marked with blue boxes that external rotate the shoulder is most important. However, if this muscle strength is weak, it is overactivated and injury occurs. The next step is introduce a preventive strategy. In GASSET, archery prevention strategies are back and hip mobility, back and pelvic control, spine upper back mobility and strength, shoulder mobility and strength, shoulder blade control, core and rotational strength, and sport-specific training. Level 1 consists of 10 exercises. I individually added one exercise for thoracic spine rotation on the GASSET shoulder part. So I started with a total of 11 exercises. Leg cross prone and spine leg cross for mobility of back and hip. Note that the shoulder firmly touches the floor and the face does not rotate in the opposite direction. These are exercises to improve the control of the back and pelvis. Back and pelvis control. While the heel touches the floor, the back and pelvis have to control the posture firmly. Trunk stretch. If you try to push your fingertip further away from your body, you can feel more stretched. These are for mobility of the thoracic flexion, extension, and rotation. Upper back mobility. The thoracic should be extended as the chest and shoulder were slowly released while keeping the back on the floor. Side-lying rotation. When your knee does not touch on the floor, it is recommended to use a foam roller or base. This is to increase the thoracic vertebral movement by activating the femoral adductor muscle and core by pressing the bottom of the knee or the foam roller. If you push your fingertip far away during the rotation, your shoulder will be more stretched. This is a good exercise to make the shoulder movement more comfortable during setup and drawing. I will explain how to exercise in standing posture in the slide later. These are strengthening the shoulders and upper back. Overhead shoulder strength. When moving in a diagonal direction, feel the contraction of the deltoid and lower trapezius, and slow return to the eccentric contraction. Bow and arrow. This is most sport-specific exercise in archery. If the forearm is pronated, as shown in this video, it activates more on the back line muscle link and scapula. Hip strengthening exercise to reduce low back pain. Hip abduction. During exercise, make sure the hip abductor of the opposite leg also contracts. Hip adduction. The hip adductor serves to hold the core stronger when drawing the bow. Avoid shaking or tilting your body. The last part of the level 1, upper body rotation. This is a good exercise for archers in the shoulder part of gasset. Keep one arm and scapula pushing on the floor, then rotate the opposite arm. Level 2 consists of 10 exercises plus hip stretching, core, and shoulder stretching. And one more strengthening exercise was added to match the difficulty. I will only look at the added exercises. Hip flexor stretch. Shortening of the flexor of the hip joint causes low back pain, so the following stretching is needed. Pushing the top of the foot and shin toward the floor, the hip flex will be more stretched. Also, if you push the fingertip of the raised arm toward the ceiling, the inner shoulder, especially subscapularis, will be more stretched. Slipper stretch. It will improve the shoulder internal rotation. When the shoulder is internal rotated, the scapula and shoulder should be fixed to the floor. If there is any pain in the end range, then minimize the range where you feel comfort. Core strength with ball. Activate the core using the ball in the kneeling position. Avoid hyperextension of the back. When your forearm is supinate or the elbow is extended, the brachial triceps and scapular muscle will be more contracted. Back and pelvic control plus. It's a progressive exercise at level 1. This is done by lifting the heel, so the more control is needed for the back and pelvis. Last part of the level 2, I added one above Y. This is for strengthening both scapular muscles. After make Y, you can slowly return to eccentric contraction. Level 3 includes a stronger rotation. I added 2 exercises for strengthening of shoulders. Rotational strength. This is improve the rotational strength of core muscle by using a steeper band. In addition to slipper stretch, you need to do shoulder stretch spine. This is because archers have many shortening in the posterior part of the shoulder. Firmly fix the scapula and stretch only the posterior side of the shoulder. The target range is the elbow is to the front of your nose. You can also apply two stretches together as shown in the following videos. Lie down on your side and firmly attach the scapula and shoulder to the floor. Stretch the internal rotation and posterior part of the shoulder. Lower the arm. After pulling with the both hand on your way back, slowly return with one hand. Backward throw. It requires constantly eye-hand coordination. Back-head throw will decelerate internal rotation and accelerate external rotation of the shoulder. This is similar to the acceleration of shoulder right after shooting. Now let's adapt my experience of get set into archery competition situation. So I'll introduce my prevention strategy by using a one band while standing. First, let's do deep shoulder muscle activation. With your less steeper band, let the shoulders start with the internal rotation and end with the external rotation. Do this at least 10 times. Don't bend your wrist while you are doing this exercise. Second, this is for trunk rotation mobility and strength. You can widely increase the range of rotation of the thoracic step by step, and this will strengthen the power of rotation. Third, shoulder internal rotation versus external rotation. The power of internal and external should be equally the same. No one of them should be stronger than opposite. During the flexion and abduction of the shoulder, the internal and external rotation should be more rapidly at the same time. You are shaking at the band. When the shoulder is in external rotated position at the end, on the way back, like the lower arm, return to start position slowly. Fourth, front arm line versus back arm line. The balance between the front and back arm line is important. Archers tend to have a shorter front arm line. Start with eccentric stretch of the front arm line while lowering your arms horizontally from the height of your head with your arm straight. Lean forward and eccentric stretch your back line with one hand pushing toward to the opposite foot and one hand pushing over toward the ceiling. Fifth, upper arm line versus lower arm line. Archers tend to shorten of the upper arm line associated overuse and shoulder elevation. Spread the band outward with the standing position. Let the feet place narrow each other. The shoulder is raised toward to your ears while feeling the contraction of upper trapezius and triceps. And then return slowly with keeping the tricep contraction. Start with your leg widely, stretch your arm and push them out of the band. Bend your trunk sideways, rotate your thoracic spine, and push your fingertips far away from each other. Then you can feel the lower arm line stretching. This exercise is the best way to prevent the injury mechanism I have mentioned earlier. Lastly, sports-specific training. It's an exercise to transmit ground reaction force to the upper body with one leg standing. Transferring ground force of the lower body to the upper body can reduce loading of the shoulder for archers. Exercise sequences are important. Both arms pulled with the band. Lifting the heel first, then move the weight to the opposite foot, and lifting forefoot carefully. Bend your knee in 90 degrees, move the band back and forward. In this exercise, you should hold your band really tightly. This exercise of drawing the bow is an exercise that finishes and summarizes that all of exercises we have done so far. Hold the band between the second and third finger to enhance to grip power. The pronation of the forearm will be more activate the shoulder blade. Last step, assess effectiveness of strategy. So far, no research has been done to determine the effectiveness of an injury prevention program for archers. Therefore, further research is needed. In addition, research on the prevalence of archery is required. For this study, we need collaboration of World Archery, the Medical Science Division, and the IOC research centers. We have looked at all of the IOC chosen strategy for injury prevention. I'll explain two more things to prevent archery injury. It's about loading and screening. Loading management is important to prevent injury. Therefore, we have done a pilot study to find a relationship between the bow drawing force and maximal strength. The individual maximum strength was measured isometrically in the bow position using isokinetic equipment. As a result, male archers had a drawing force ratio of 52.8% compared to their strength. In comparison, female archers was 65.4%. If we can collaborate with other NOC, we believe we can provide guidelines for safe green zone, warning yellow zone, and dangerous red zones. In order to create the most similar environment to archery situation, we can use the dynamometer directly on the bow to do like this following video. The maximum muscle strength is calculated by adding the actual pound of the individual bow and the result of dynamometer. This screening test is performed as preventive measure to detect a potential injury in case of archers of non-symptoms but clear sign of injury. I would like to introduce two tests that relate to archery movement. The first is the modified Wickham test. It's to check if there is discomfort and pain in the movement of the shoulder during the drawing and anchoring position. If there is no pain through this test, it is determined that there is no problem with the shoulder tendon. However, this is not a full determinant of the shoulder problem. To make sure, we advise to take an additional examination if necessary. Second, bow loading test. The bow arm side must have enough muscle strength to maintain the posture without causing any pain while lifting the bow. In addition, the draw arm side must have at least a drawing pound of muscle strength to maintain the posture without causing any pain in the anchoring position. The purpose of these two screening is early detection of injury. It helps to reduce the risk of injury or help you find the condition that can be treated more effectively. Therefore, it is recommended to use it regularly before start training. It's a summary. KESET is aimed to preventing sports injury. In the future, continuous research is needed to update the archery part. The exercise methods provide video in all levels of variations, and it's easy to apply in any situation. Most importantly, GESET is based on IOC Medical Commission evidence-based experience. So it will give you a powerful motivation for archers and coaches. These are references. Thank you very much.